A lot has been said in this country about efforts to reconcile the past and the trauma that was inflicted on Indigenous communities across this country. Do you think enough has been done?
Definitely not.
Truth and reconciliation. What does that actually mean for all of us who settled in Canada, but also for Indigenous people? Hey, it's BG, and before we dive deep into this important moment, I need you to do a few things like subscribe to this channel, tap the notification bell, hit the like button, and make sure to follow us across all of our social media. On the second annual Truth and Reconciliation Day, we're spotlighting Michael Linklater, an Indigenous activist and athlete who is using his moment to celebrate the strength, resilience, and culture of his people. But he's also sharing the true meaning of what truth and reconciliation actually means and how each and every one of us can take part. Michael Linklater, thanks so much for joining me on the BG Show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
It's the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. I just love to know from you, just off the top, what does this day mean to you?
Today's an important day. When I think of this day, I think I take time and I reflect on my grandparents, my mom and dad, and I think about what they went through. And I think about, the stories that they would tell us when I was growing up as a kid. It was stuff that, seemed like it was just every day. They were just telling us about our childhood. So when I look back and I reflect on not only their upbringing and what they had to endure, but also, the stories they shared with us as a kid growing up, and how I thought that was common knowledge, and now as an adult and looking back on life, to see how much that not only Canadians but the world was lied to. And it's something that our family grew up with. So when I look back and I think on this day and reflecting, it means a lot, that we're able to recognize the survivors, but take a moment to honor those who didn't make it back, all of the effects that our people suffer, and at the same time a celebration, to celebrate how far our people have come, and all of the contributions that they've made to society.
What are you doing today to honor your family's legacy and what your family has been through?
So each year is a little bit different, and I make a decision on how I want to spend the day. And this year, like it will, specifically with every year, I make sure that I always take the time again to reflect. I sit in prayer and I think about, again, what our family has gone through and a lot of other families. And today I will be joining a celebration at a powwow, and it's just going to be an opportunity to just be around a lot of good people.
A lot has been said in this country about efforts to reconcile the past and the trauma that was inflicted on Indigenous communities across this country. Do you think enough has been done?
Definitely not. I think we're in that early stage and taking those first few steps, which the old saying, every step, every journey begins with that first step, and this is where we are right now. There's still a lot of things to do. With the 94 calls to action, I know that still lots of people, when we're talking about reconciliation, a lot of people still haven't even read the calls to action, let alone implement them. So there's a number of those calls to action that have been implemented with various organizations, but it's important that each of us do our part. And I was reflecting yesterday. I was walking and I saw, the compassion that people look at Indigenous people, and especially when you're wearing an orange shirt, it's a symbol, and it triggers people to really think about what has happened, not so long ago. And I just, in that moment, I thought, and I wish that people would look at us with that compassion every day. Because every single day our people are still dealing with racism, we're still dealing with prejudice, there's so many things that we still deal with when it comes to the colonization and oppression. So I just, had wished that people would look at us with the same understanding that we're resilient and we're doing amazing things, and that it's not necessarily a pity thing, but it's to really recognize the truth and what our survivors went through. Because residential school was one thing, but living your life after that and having to pick yourself up after that, it's something that I take the time personally to think about and recognize. So yeah, it's an important day, and it's a mix of emotions for me.
The life after, the ripple effects from residential schools. It doesn't seem, on my end personally, that is talked enough in the conversation about the effects. How do you feel about that?
I would agree. I think that a lot of people, especially when it comes to this day, and the big word in discussion is residential schools. But like, if you actually put yourself, like, take a moment and just put yourself in any of those family settings, shoes or position. As a parent myself, I cannot fathom the idea of my children being ripped from me and forced into a system that I don't support. And then for them to be gone for so long, and then to have to endure with what they did, or putting myself as a child being ripped from my family, so thinking about those, and how each and every one of us, regardless of our ancestry or descent, we all have some inner child wounds. Our parents did the best they could to raise us, for each and every one of us, but we still carry some of that stuff. Now, if you can think about, again, from their shoes, so from that perspective, when we talk about the term, the effects, the intergenerational trauma, more research has come to light that, we pass down that trauma through our genes when the child is developing in the womb. So when you think about how much work that has been done for us to be as successful and thriving as we are as a people today, it is something that needs to be recognized. And, furthermore, to this day, we take those moments to mourn and to pay respect and honor. But again, there's that other component where we may not be looking so much towards also the celebration side, but there's a lot of people who have done tremendous work. And there's a lot of people who are doing reconciliation work from the Indigenous community in terms of explaining and teaching long before, the calls to action came to be. So all of that needs to be recognized as well. As you mentioned, with that ripple effect in the after, like, we've come a long way, but there's still a long way to go.
I do want to highlight and ask your opinion on the Pope's apology that happened this year. We know that he came to Canada and he apologized for the Catholic Church's involvement in residential schools. What did you make of his apology? What did you make of the Pope's apology?
I would say, for me personally, from my perspective, I don't necessarily have a say in that, because it was more so for the survivors who went to the schools, who it's something that some of them demanded, some of them wanted. And again, the diversity within our Indigenous communities is very broad. So there's some people who wanted it and some people, so it's just being mindful of each and every one of their individual emotions or requests. So in terms of the apology, for me personally, I don't have any attachment to it, but listening to the survivors and some of them, what they shared is more so where you want to kind of direct your thoughts, because there's a lot of people that have, again, different opinions on it, and of course everybody has one. But I fortunately, my generation, I didn't personally go to residential school, but being raised by residential school survivors, it's important that we listen to them, because they're the ones that went through it. So again, being here today, I'm grateful to share from my thoughts, my perspective, but those are the voices that we need to honor. TRC, truth and reconciliation starts with truth. And there's hard truths out there. Some people don't want to acknowledge the truth. So it's important that non-Indigenous people really take the time to dive in. And there's no shortage of stories of the true history of this country. I also believe it's important to understand the Royal Proclamation, because it recognizes Indigenous sovereignty, First Nations sovereignty, and then also to the Indian Act. Like, these are getting more into like kind of a governance side, but it's really important to see that, you know, when treaties were signed, treaties can only be signed between a nation and a nation. But with the passing of the Indian Act, really, it really changed things, and again, would encourage people to just really look into that, because we do talk about the calls to action, and that's the other thing that I would want people to do, is actually read through the calls to action and understand how they came about, because there is a lot of work that went into formulating those calls to action. And then last is implementing, like actually answering those calls to action in every capacity. And for individuals, just continuing to stay on that journey. And I know a big question that a lot of my non-Indigenous friends ask is, a lot of them are fearful because they don't know where to start, or they don't know how to start. And the guidance that I always share in that perspective is, as long as it's coming from a good place with good intention, it's better to essentially have your hand slapped for doing something rather than doing nothing. And a lot of people are sitting doing nothing because they're too afraid. So it's just important to do whatever research or educating you can. Go to different communities where you can listen firsthand, because that's something how we've been taught is you show up, you learn by experience. And so when you sit there and gain that firsthand knowledge, when you're sharing or when you're wanting to speak up or do something, the way you can go about it is say, what I have learned or what somebody taught me is this, and then you share. At the same time, understanding that we have a wide range of teachings across, Turtle Island. So just because you receive the teaching or knowledge from one place doesn't necessarily translate to another. So but as you continue to do your own understanding, your own work with reconciliation, you'll come to understand that.
That's such a good point. And I actually thank you so much for even taking the time to educate us. There's something that you touched on that I also want to bring into this conversation, is the joy aspect. And you have so many fans, including us here at the BG Show. But is there anybody else that we should be looking out for, we should definitely be paying attention to?
Again, there are so many. There's so many people, in every different facet. Like, you look in the movie industry, you look in the actress modeling industry, you look in the education side. There's so many different amazing people. One place to really look to is I'm very fortunate to be an Inspire laureate. And so for a lot of Inspire laureates, they're recognized for their work. And so that would be a great place to start, to take a look at different people and places. And the other thing too is there's a lot of people who are doing amazing work that are not necessarily on social media. Right. So that's something also too to recognize, because in today's world, we are heavily involved on social media, which is great, but it's also important to recognize that there's some amazing individuals that are not on social media doing tremendous work. So again, I don't have any names specifically that I want to give shout outs to, but I want to encourage people to really do their own research, because I could give you a couple athletes, but we might have some academics who are listening, and there's a tremendous amount of people who are doing wonderful work in the academic world. So again, kind of doing your research and looking within your respective field, you'll be able to find many people.
Hey BG Squad, thanks so much for checking out our channel. And listen to this, we have more great content for you, like this video right here and this video right here. By the way, don't forget to subscribe to this channel right now and tap that notification bell.